This party is a real who's who of who? How is Rebecca ever going to rekindle her romance with Josh now that Valencia has warned her to stay away from them both? Will we ever learn more about Rebecca's childhood and the obvious trauma she's experienced? And is this burgeoning relationship between Rebecca and Paula simply a one-way street? Or will Rebecca ever do something for Paula? My guests and I will try to answer these questions as we break down the music and mental health themes in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Season 1, Episode 3, titled I Hope Josh Comes to My Party! Exclamation point. I'm Aurora Brown, and this is We're All So Broken Inside on the Intersectional Psychology Podcast. Let's get into it. Aurora Brown and Intersectional Psychology acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout South Africa and their connections to land, water, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Indigenous people listening today. I have friends. I definitely have friends. No one can say that I do not have friends. So many friends, in fact, that I have to force them to spend time with me by getting them on this podcast. I have friends. I definitely have friends. Friends, friends, friendly friends. Time to meet my friends.
Hi, my name is HuiMei. This is my second time on this podcast series, and I'm also often being referred to as Lulu, similar to the first episode. I am a registered counselor, but I'm also currently completing my master's in clinical psychology. Over to you, Darren.
And I'm one of those definitely have friends, Darryn over here, also a student psychologist at UCT, and really excited to be here. It's my first time. Thanks for having me, Aurora.
Thank you both so much for being here. Yeah, Darryn, I had to get you on for this episode with the boy band of four Joshes at the end. It's very like I needed someone who was there for the whole Backstreet Boys in sync 98 degrees moment because I've never felt more ancient than the other day. I brought up Ricky Lake and Lulu and Jordan were both like, who? Who dat? And
I feel you, girl. My references are getting old for the Gen Zs. We're too old. Ricky Lake,
First of all,
who?
yeah,
I do know Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. Okay, I do know them, not Ricky Lake.
okay, thank you. Um, I might, yeah, you'll, if I get you back for episode 8, I think Ricky Lake makes an appearance in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But let's move on to Lulu. What is your relationship with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend? You've been on the podcast before. It was your first time watching it. Now you're a little bit deeper into the show. Tell me, how are you finding it? How far are you?
I've only watched up until episode 3. So I've watched episode 1, 2, and 3. It's like I said the first time, it's been getting more and more interesting. And yeah, can't wait to continue watching. I feel like her craziness is getting a bit deeper.
But we're also finding out a bit more about the roots of that craziness,
Yes,
which is interesting.
yes, for sure. And I think this episode we see a lot more of Josh and her friend as well, which it wasn't really touched on in the first episode.
Absolutely. Darren, what is your relationship with Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
I'd never heard of it before you asked me to watch it. Only watched this third episode specifically.
Okay.
Have quite a few thoughts about it. First of all, I don't know why she's obsessed with Josh. He's so dry, but it just is what it is. Like he gives me nothing, and she's like, "Oh my god." Although I have quite a few competing thoughts around the portrayal of mental health and whether
Mm,
the sense that they're playing the long game in this show
mm,
is a good way to portray mental health, because I think you need to watch it as a collective in order to see the progression of the story. But we live in
mm,
an attention economy where people have 3-second attention spans. So I wonder whether the use of parody and satire as a means of communicating about mental health makes sense in that context.
Mm.
mm. That's a really interesting point. And Kaylin and I were talking a little bit about that on the previous episode. I think so. This series came out before the rise of TikTok. And I think, I mean, even then, attention spans were short, and asking people to commit to a whole 18 episode season and a 4 season show is a big ask. But nowadays, things are even shorter and you only get little clips. I'm going to do a bit of a recap of the plot of just this episode quickly. I'm going to try and do it within 1 minute. So Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Season 1, Episode 3, I Hope Josh Comes to My Party, was written by Rachel Bloom and Aline Brosh McKenna. It was directed by Tamara Davis, a female director, yay. She also
Yay.
directed that, that documentary I was telling you about, Lulu. There was a documentary that came out, I think, in 2024 called Larger Than Life, Reign of the Boy Bands, and it tracked the evolution of boy bands from the Beatles to 17 and BTS in the K-pop era, which was very, very interesting. And it featured interviews with some of the singers from different boy bands from the different eras. Okay, so here's the plot. Lulu, can you time me? Do you have your phone nearby?
Yes, I do. All right,
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. Rebecca is feeling deflated because Valencia has ordered Josh not to spend time alone with her, and because he is scared of his girlfriend, he is obeying this. So Paula suggests that Rebecca throw a party as a way to invite him over. However, Rebecca is hesitant because she has childhood trauma from when her dad permanently walked out on their family during Rebecca's 12th birthday party. Josh is excited to attend the party, but Greg refuses because he is still angry with Rebecca. Heather, Rebecca's neighbor, agrees to come to the party in order to observe Rebecca, who she thinks would make a good case study for her abnormal psych class. When Josh arrives at the party, Rebecca is mortified because hardly anyone actually came. Josh reassures her that it's normal because she just moved into town and helps her promote the party on social media. Rebecca notices that Josh ignores a text from Valencia during the party, and he tells Rebecca that they should just hang out as friends when they want to. Oh, after meeting with her son's principal to discuss his cheating. No, I'm not finished yet. After meeting with her son's principal to discuss his cheating, Paula invites a group from Gamblers Anonymous to come to Rebecca's party. Greg also shows up and Rebecca reconciles with him. Sorry, that paragraph was on the next page. Okay.
Okay, we
So there was the plot.
1 minute 7 seconds, but we will take away those 7 seconds since I interrupted you. So you did make it.
Okay, well, let's start with this opening scene. Rebecca, Josh, and White Josh. What did you guys think about this?
First of all, white Josh, hilarious that there's a white and Asian Josh. But like I said, in this episode, we see a lot more about her obsession with Josh, to the point where she is now purposefully damaging her garbage disposal in order to get him to come over. So yeah, that was that was quite interesting. It's like the more you go, the deeper her obsession is showing. And yeah, it was like Darren said, it's doing a bit too much for someone who's average looking, average personality. Like, I don't know what you thought about that.
Yeah, I've been dunking hard on Josh the past two episodes. I've just been like giving him the worst time, but in this episode, he kind of a little bit redeemed himself for me. Um, but we'll get to that. So, yeah, like it is funny. I think the show is pretty good with representation, and I think the fact that, you know, back when I was growing up, and probably when these characters were growing up, um, the person of color is usually the token friend. And if there were two Joshes, then I think like the white supremacist society that many of us grew up in would have been like, oh, that's the Asian Josh or the black Josh. And the person of color would be like the secondary character. But it it's interesting here where they flip it and white Josh is like the secondary character and he's the one who gets the racial, yeah, like moniker. But he comes in and he's like, very cool apartment. How long have you been here? And there are like no decorations in Rebecca's home. Like she's literally just moved there to be with Josh. She's been there for weeks and she has not like put in any effort into her home because that's she doesn't care. She's just like following Josh around town, and she's not paying any attention to her actual home. Um, yeah, Darren, what did you think about this scene? This was your introduction to all of these characters.
I mean, I also did love the subversion of beauty standards, because she was like, "Why, Josh, put your shirt back on and whatever." And why Josh, in some ways, represents what was stereotypically deemed beautiful. So I thought that was interesting. Um, I guess it's a fair representation of limerence, the kind of obsession that we feel. I mean, I don't know. I felt empathetic because I've experienced something like that. So I mean, I've never put chicken down the trash to kind of get someone to come and see
Mhm.
me. But I get the sense, I get the sense of wanting so desperately to be seen by someone that you're willing to do what others might deem crazy. And I think it sets up the show, or at least the episode, in a way where one can explore where that comes from. I guess that's it's part of the aim, right? It looks crazy off the bat, but we're also subverting the concept of crazy, trying to give it
Yeah.
an origin story and build a narrative around it.
But you're right, like with the subversion of beauty standards, because and just the inherent like contradiction in Rebecca's statement to Josh, because she's like, I'm really on the hunt for like cute single guys, and there is white Josh taking off his clothes, looking absolutely gorgeous, and she's just like, nah.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
like yeah, totally focused on Josh. Okay, so let's go then to the scene with Rebecca and Paula, where Paula comes in and Rebecca tells her about this horrendous party at her 12th birthday, where she invited like all of her friends to come and watch this pay-per-view concert of a boy band called Room Temperature, which is like a riff off 98 Degrees, which was a real boy band back in the day. What did you guys think about this flashback? Face Your Fears was written by Rachel Bloom, Adam Schlesinger, Jack Dolgen, and Sono Patel, and was performed by Donna Lynn Champlin as Paula Proctor.
Just believe in yourself. Face your fears.
Okay, I have so many
The
problems.
children are the future.
So this is Paula's first big solo song, and I want to say that Donna Lynn Champlin knocks it out of the park. But that's no surprise. She is a Broadway actress, after all.
The first thing that came to mind for me was, I mean, I love the song, and just face your fears, and I think it speaks a little bit to the kind of culture we have around mental health, generally making the rounds in social media. There's sort of a reductionism and this sort of toxic positivity that trauma is just processed by facing your fears, and that's enough. So I was struck by that, and I think that's the drama of the song. They say stuff like "run with scissors," "wipe back to front." um, so that was striking for me, and also in some sense the way her friend kind of dismissed the story. It was she was relating something quite meaningful to her, something quite difficult for her. And the friend was just like, "Hey, girl, don't worry. Face your fears. We're going to have a party and life's going to be great." Um, so it made me think a lot about how we show up in relationships for one another, because I think often we try and solve others. We struggle to sit with the discomfort. And so the easiest thing is to give some nugget of advice or suggest some solution instead of just being in the discomfort.
Absolutely. I also wrote down toxic positivity and just like this oversimplification of, um, I mean, I don't, yeah, the song, you know, talks about, you can fly off a building, fly out of a window. And it reminded me of another song from that era by a redacted singer who I will not mention. Um, but yeah, just like this oversimplification of like inspirational songs, um, that basically says you can do anything you put your mind to, when obviously there are natural limits in the world. But Lulu, what did you think? How do you think that experience with her dad walking out on her 12th birthday, how would that impact, or how might that impact Rebecca's psyche?
Mm. I'm glad that we're finally going into more about her dad, because I think in episode one it showed her mom. So now we're getting a little bit more about the dad, and definitely when a father figure or parental figure is absent in your life, we've seen how it can impact people's mental health or overall well-being in many different ways. It can, I think, stereotypically people think that it creates abandonment issues, which it can happen, but other things can form as well. It can impact your self-esteem. It can impact the way you form relationships with people. And um, I don't know if I'm allowed to like talk about the other scenes now in relation to this,
Sure,
or
yeah.
we talk about it scene by scene. Um, but I thought about how Josh, when he came at the party, and he had a really kind of like, he was making Rebecca feel better that people didn't arrive, and he tried to like turn the party into a better experience for people. That I was like, oh, she's going to be like more obsessed with Josh now, because he definitely filled that hole that her father left when her father abandoned her, left the party. I forgot the details, but I think it was like the father left her birthday party, and when she was younger. So again, you then attach this, like Josh is now seen as someone who can heal that hole, when it's not that simple. It's also a lot to expect other people to heal that like empty hole inside, when I feel like a lot of the healing is actually on your on your own responsibility to do, if that makes sense. I also wanted to comment on this, sorry, on the face your face.
Like, and also when we talk about like the loss of a father figure, it's not to say that, single pair or single sex, um, couples and single parents can't, um, you know raise or provide good childhoods for children. It's just that the fact of any parent, leaving, abandoning their child, or what it feels like an abandonment, will create a wound, and that is the real wound. And like you say, maybe Josh was the first um, person that she met that could kind of fill that hole. Um, and yeah, for Darryn, you've only watched this episode, but they have history. So Rebecca and Josh met when they were 16 years old at summer camp, and he was like her first romantic relationship. And then she just randomly bumped into him 10 years later in New York, and she moved to West Covina just to be with him. Um, yeah, very impulsive.
So we don't understand anything about their obsession beyond the fact that they have a history. There's nothing specific about Josh that's
Yes.
been revealed yet.
Yes,
Also, it's
nothing.
basically just they had a history, ran into him, and she's like, "Yes, I'm uprooting my
Mm,
life for this man."
mm, mm.
Yes, but to be fair, like she was very unhappy in New York. It was, yeah, maybe if she'd had maybe if she'd been in a good space in New York, it wouldn't have had such an impact on her. But she was, at a crisis point in her life already. And Rebecca's dad says to her mom, "You couldn't even throw her a decent party." Well, why don't you throw the party then, my guy? Like, what are you bringing to this household? Yeah. Lily, you
Oh
wanted to
no, I'm
talk
glad.
about Face Your Fears.
Oh no, just yeah, I found it very interesting that they used children as background characters in that song. Because if I'm correct, in all the other songs, that hasn't happened. Um, and it just adds to, like Darren said, this thing where they tell you to face your fears, run with scissors, drop out of school, and then later we actually see her child listening to what the mother is saying, and now having to face the consequences of facing your fears. I think the person stole the test or something. But just to comment on the friendship between them, I feel like it's still a surface level friendship because they've only known each other for a few weeks. And we see it quite often where when you don't know a person well enough, you are kind of hesitant to comment on their behavior or the consequences of what their behavior could lead to. So I feel like she would be hesitant to actually be real with Rebecca and be like, hey, maybe not do that, but like rather encourage it because they don't have that closeness where they can call each other out yet. But it also adds to, sorry, I keep forgetting her friend's name. What's her name again?
Paula.
Paula. Yes. Like it also makes sense that she's saying all this because again in the other episodes, from the first moment they met, Paula was already like, yes, girl, I'm glad you moved here for love. I'm glad you moved here for this man. And so it just made sense that she was singing the song and further encouraging Rebecca's behavior.
And I think, in some sense, Rebecca's life is an escape for Paula. Right? I
Mm,
think that, I mean, Paula's marriage is so miserable. She's with a man who's, I don't know, I don't know what's going on there. He seems like he needs help. And I think this
Yeah.
love story is it's whimsical and romantic, and it's a fantasy that she can lose herself in. And so, in part, I think she's also projecting her own stuff into that space. And it got me thinking about how often sometimes that happens. I hear your point, Lulu, that it's a new friendship, so you can't be calling each other out. But sometimes I guess what happens in other people's lives can be an escape for from our own,
mm.
and that's the
That is
feeling I
true.
got with Paula.
Yeah, I feel like we could even experience that as viewers. As in, we wouldn't engage in the behaviors that the characters are doing in this show, but it's interesting to watch because we don't have to face the consequences, but the characters do.
Yeah. But it's interesting. So I definitely think, Rebecca's love story is an escape for Paula, and she is romanticizing this and projecting all of her um, I mean, she even talks about when she comes up with the idea for the party, she's like, there's a loophole. It's in every teen movie. So this is where she's drawing her references from teen movies. And she's like a grown ass woman. And she is trying to live out this fantasy that she never got when she was younger. But it's interesting what you say about, they've only just met, so they don't have that kind of trust where they can just say whatever to each other, or where they can call each other out. But then if you look at Greg, like he and Rebecca are just throwing darts at each other or bobs at each other the whole time. And she she even says to him, this is the hallmark of a strong friendship, saying the worst possible things to each other and then going to a party. And I mean, yes, good friendships are like safe spaces in which to have disagreements and even to hurt each other's feelings occasionally. But that safety is based on like an understanding of mutual trust and love and support. And it takes time to earn and build up that trust. But based on Rebecca and Greg's relationship, like 100% of their interactions have been unsatisfactory to either or what to either like one or both of them. So there's been no opportunity to build up that love and trust. And Rebecca certainly doesn't support Greg. Like she uses his attraction towards her for her own ends. And as soon as like Josh appears, she immediately loses interest in her, unresolved in that like unresolved conversation with Greg. She like literally says, "Whatever, I don't care anymore," and she just goes off to Josh. Um, so yeah, this is an interesting episode on friendships, um, contrasting Rebecca and Paula's friendship with like Greg and Rebecca's situationship. But you both mentioned Paula's family. Shall we talk a little bit more about that? This is the first time we kind of get to see behind the scenes what's happening in Paula's home. We see her kids and her husband, who, like Darryn says, has zero emotional empathy. What did you guys think about her sons?
That scene for me was hilarious because he was just like humming a song. He coaches barbershop or something, right? That's what I gathered. But his whole life is just this like barbershop slash glee club thing. And I can't remember what she was saying, and he's just humming the song and barely like responding. I could imagine that's really lonely, man. Like, girl is lonely. So losing herself in Rebecca's crazy makes a whole lot of sense to me. Going to places like that is hard. You're in a marriage, but you're alone.
Yeah. And she's frustrated. Like she tries to connect with them, but she gets nothing back from her family. She's asking him about the tablecloth from their wedding, and he's like, "Oh no, I threw it out." And she's like,
Oh yeah.
"Oh, so if I ask you to take out the recycling, will you throw away our wedding album because it's like partly made of paper?" And he's like, "I don't understand what you're asking." Like he doesn't get that there is an emotional attachment to these things, and he doesn't seem to share this emotional attachment. Um, what did you think about
Which is strange
her
because he's wildly
son?
obsessed about barbershop. So you wonder if he has some sort of
Mhm.
attachment to it or if it's just kind of an escape for him too.
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting point. What did you think about her son with a katana at the table and his like serial killer stare at her? I get chills every time I see that scene. I'm like, this guy. It's amazing that we haven't seen their family on the 9 o'clock news yet.
I just felt very bad for Paula. And even just that scene alone of like the kid sitting with a very short katana. That was my first thought. I'm like, why is that even a katana? Is that a little knife that's supposed to be a katana? Um, but just just that would be very considered very disrespectful in my home, like sitting at the dinner table with a katana. So it kind of already creates a sense of the house is a bit chaotic. And the reason why I felt bad is because I was like, okay, clearly the husband is absent. Like, why is the husband sitting there and not reprimanding the child in any way? Or even when the school called, they called Paula. And it's not like Paula is just a housewife, she also has a job. And I think it speaks to many. I mean, I'm not a mother, but I've spoken to many mothers, and I think it speaks to many experiences that mothers go through. They have so much on their plates, and their husbands typically just focus on their careers and their jobs, and the rest of the house the mother has to care for, when it comes to the kids, when it comes to, I think in that scene she was washing dishes, maybe. So she was, or
She
she
was
was
looking
doing
for the
something.
tablecloth. Yeah, she was just kind of like
Oh,
in all the
okay.
cupboards.
Yeah, so she was doing something and she still has a job, So I think it was a bit of a commentary on how much mothers actually go through and experience. Like, women, we have to work now, especially in this economy. But none of the responsibilities of being a mother has been lessened or shared with the partner. It's more so, still expected in many households that the mother still takes care of everything.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of, it is a comment on like the invisible labor of women and how child care is still kind of seen as predominantly the woman's responsibility. Like, even though the school called Paula, like she and Scott, her husband, could both have gone to the meeting, like, but she was the only one who showed up in the end. Um, what did you guys think about? So her other son, Tommy, he's been diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, a panic disorder, restless leg syndrome, SAD. I mean, what do you think about having so many comorbidities and like these multiple diagnoses?
I don't know. My gut instinct to that was it was a commentary on what feels like the rise of diagnoses in adolescence. I mean, anecdotally, it just feels like we try and explain any bad behavior with some sort of diagnosis nowadays. Um, and I think that's what the commentary that they were making, because it was a laundry list of diagnoses, didn't really say much of anything. And it felt almost like it was said to kind of excuse bad behavior. So it became this tension of what role is the diagnosis playing, but also commentary on the fact that we tend to try and explain away bad behavior with diagnoses. And so again, it's sort of a parody, right? It's satirical, but I wonder if it might go over people's heads, because I think the idea is that that's the commentary about it, right? It's like you can't use a diagnosis to explain away everything. Not every strange behavior must be pathologized. Um, so I was in two minds because I got it. That's how I understood it. But I wondered if a lot of people will, if it could reify some of the stereotypes, because I think there are stereotypes around, bad behavior. This kid has a laundry list of diagnoses, and this is how they're bound to behave. So you're kind of strengthening the association, even if it is in service of parody here.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good point. This over pathologization of problem behavior. Um, but in our training, also, you know, we're kind of taught you go for the, or you look for the diagnosis that covers the most amount of symptoms. So rather than like diagnosing him with ADHD and OCD and SAD, like the DSM says, okay, is this disturbance or this disorder, is it not better explained by the symptoms of another mental disorder, like, for example, autism spectrum disorder, in terms of the repetitive patterns of behavior when it comes to OCD? So um, it's also, I don't think the series itself was making this commentary, but it is something that I was thinking of, like, this person or this mental health practitioner who diagnosed all of these things, like, are they um are they doing a good job in terms of looking at what is the least number of diagnoses that we can give to this child so that he isn't stigmatized and pathologized, and what is the one disorder that we can treat that covers the most bases.
I mean, on the one hand, I agree, and the other, it can be a whole conversation around the role of diagnoses in psychiatry and how we diagnose. Because, I mean, if we're honest with people, though the DSM is the diagnostic Bible, it is in essence conditions defined as a list of symptoms, right? So we've adopted this categorical approach, and I think sometimes that speaks to how hard it is to place somebody squarely inside a particular diagnosis. But you make a
Absolutely.
fair point that when it comes to diagnosing, we need to find something that explains the majority of symptoms rather than resorting to a laundry list of diagnoses.
And I think something that many Western practitioners don't consider is also what are the environmental factors and like the contextual factors that could be impacting this. I mean, I don't know. I think I would also maybe have a panic disorder if my brother was sitting at our dining table with a katana. Um, like, what are the environmental factors that we could address to reduce these symptoms rather than pathologizing them or over medicalizing them. Yeah, Lulu, you're being very quiet.
Oh, no, I was just waiting for you guys to finish. For me, that scene just made me automatically think about, okay, what do all these diagnoses mean for the child and the family? Because for people who aren't in the mental health field, and actually for people who are in the mental health field, being diagnosed can mean a lot of things. And it's about how that person understands their own diagnoses as well. So I was just sitting here thinking, oh my word, that is so many things. How are the parents coping with that? If your child just gets diagnosed with ADHD, just ADHD, it already feels like there's a lot of things they need to change in their lifestyle, in their structure, in like many like small things that are important to help aid the child. But when a child gets diagnosed with so many things, what does it mean for the parents? How are they understanding it? How's the child understanding it as well?
So, yeah, here in the We Have Friends song, we have, it's kind of also a comment on how different Rebecca is, and she doesn't really have many people who want to be her friend because she's seen as too weird or too different. We Have Friends was written by Rachel Bloom, Adam Schlesinger, and Michael Hitchcock. And it was performed by Rachel Bloom as Rebecca and Ava Akers as younger Rebecca.
We have friends. We definitely have friends. No one can say that we do not have friends. We have friends. We definitely have friends. Friends, friends, friendly friends. We have all the friends. Cool.
But then the friends that she does have are some inappropriate characters for a child, like the janitor who lives in an RV behind the school, or when she's an adult, like the lady who crashed into her car, or like a friend of a friend from law school. But then there's also, and so those are like not necessarily people that, well, yeah, a janitor is not someone that a child should be friends with and should be inviting to their party, simply because the janitor's an adult. But we also have characters. So there's like a child with a port wine stain, and there's an adult with half an eyelid. And these facial differences are kind of seen as, also making them inappropriate friends, or kind of, last kind of the last kind of people that you would want to be friends with. That's how I was seeing the song as portraying these people, which is very problematic, because that then comes into, areas of lookism and ableism. And even when they're at the party and Josh takes the photo, he wants the guy who has half an eyelid to wear sunglasses to kind of hide that. So almost making that as if it's something to be shameful about, and something that should be hidden, and something that would kind of detract from the attractiveness of this party on social media. What did you guys think about that song, We Have Friends?
Lulu, you want to go first?
Sure. Um, for me, because this isn't the first and only episode I've been watching, so when I watched this episode, I was just watching in terms of I'm so excited to see Rebecca's story, because when I watched the first episode, I remember my like I couldn't comment much on things because I'm like, there has to be more, there has to be more, and now it's showing more. From that song, I was like, okay, she clearly doesn't have a support system, which we know in mental health is very, very important. We already know that she has a bad relationship with her mom, and then now we see that absent father, and now we see that growing up, she didn't really have many friends as well. So I think it's adding more to the story of Rebecca, and giving more context to her upbringing, which I think is very important for us to understand why she's doing what she's doing. And then with regards to the friend and the hiding the glasses thing, I think we society does it quite often. I mean, photoshopping, putting filters on when you take pictures, like make sure you take my good side. um yeah, I think everyone wants to look good for social media, and it's kind of sad that in that moment, I mean, I didn't even notice the whole shades situation, but now that you pointed it out, it's quite sad that Josh did that, and it almost felt so natural. Maybe, you know it's it also means something that I didn't even notice it in that moment when Josh did that, because like in social situations, people do that so normally. Like as soon as someone's like, oh, takes out a phone, posts a picture, everyone's like fixing themselves, okay, let's get ready. So yeah, it's I didn't even know he did that specifically to that guy with the eye.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, it went over my head. It went over my head that it was a group of marginal people, marginalized people that were portrayed as her friends. Um, the song was jarring for the juxtaposition, because the content is really a desperate cry for help, and it feels like it's a person who's desperately lonely and really like trying to find a sense of being by belonging, and yet it's juxtaposed against a sort of happy, upbeat melody. Um, it was that was quite interesting for me. And what you're saying around the ableism is quite interesting. I didn't notice it. And to Lulu's point, I think it's something that sometimes it's not on people's radars. The fact that certain things are being hidden for the sake of convenience or for social acceptability, and that went over my head.
Yeah, I think it is something that is very natural or it's made natural in society. Um, and yeah, I am being very overly critical when I'm looking at this series, and probably expecting or demanding too much of it. But if I'm going to make a podcast about it, I'm going to have to unpack it, I think. Um, And then when we have so now we have the party scene. We have Rebecca kind of fangirling about Josh, and he's singing um, this song, Not Just a Boy Band, made up of four Joshes. Um, and like I said earlier, I've been dunking on Josh for like the past two episodes. But here, for the first time, he redeemed himself a little bit, and then he took it all away again when he put the sunglasses on that guy's face. But he comes into the party and he's so encouraging of Rebecca, telling her it's normal that she doesn't have a lot of people at her party because she's just moved into town. And then when she says she wants many people at her party, even if they are strangers, there's no judgment from him. He's just like, cool, let's do it. With those dimples and those eyebrows and that lopsided grin. He's just really kind and sweet to Rebecca in that one scene. And I was like, okay, I'm seeing a little bit where what she's seeing in him. And I haven't spoken much about the cast on this podcast yet, but Vincent Rodriguez III, who plays Josh, is a gay actor. And at the time, and still now, I think it's not all that common to have a gay actor portray like a super mask straight guy on TV, especially a man of color. And Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I think, is pretty good in terms of representation in its cast. And I think Vinny, as a gay Filipino-American actor, is a good example of this. And I mentioned in a previous episode that Vinny is a big advocate for the LGBTQIA+ and Filipino-American communities. And he's played gay characters as well, like he and Jonathan Bennett of Mean Girls fame were my favorite couple in Hallmark's Cherry Lane series of Christmas films. But what did you guys think about this whole party scene? And Rebecca's neighbor, one of my favorite characters, Heather, who's there to just observe her. And yeah, this boy band made up of four Joshes. Not Just a Boy Band, or A Boy Band Made Up of Four Joshes, was written by Rachel Bloom and Adam Schlesinger, and was performed by Vincent Rodriguez III as Josh.
Baby, you can kiss all your unexplained symptoms goodbye. You're never gonna miss all those nightmares in which you tend to die. We'll get you through those developmental stages that you've been stuck in for ages. Cause we're not just a boy band made up of four Joshes. We're also a team of nationally recognized mental health professionals trained in cognitive behavioral therapy with specialties in personality and sleep disorders.
I know I was triggered. I know you saying Josh redeemed himself, but I was like, I've had men who do that kind of thing. It's love bombing, intermittent reinforcement, coming with the acts of service, just being like, oh, it's okay. You know what? It's okay that you're not friends. There's like no intimacy work there. Just being kind to somebody doesn't cost much. There's no vulnerability on his part or anything like that. It's kind of just like, let me do this thing for you to show that I'm interested. So I wasn't wholly convinced. It was a cutesy scene, and then I thought for a moment that someone might watch us and be like, "Hey, being crazy works," because clearly the guy came and he was nice to me and whatever. And it just goes back to the general theme of you really need to watch the whole of this show to follow the narrative and the arc, right? Um, the boy band scene was funny because I guess again they were making a statement around how sometimes we desperately believe that a relationship will fix everything, that relational healing is what it needs to be. And I think that's what it was about, right? It was, I'm not just one Josh, I'm four Joshes, and I'm a licensed mental health professional, and I know cognitive behavioral therapy, and I can do all of these things, making a statement around how we want to rely so much on someone else to be that person. And I guess Lulu made the point earlier to say maybe some of the onus sits on us, or at least you can't go into a relationship expecting that much of it. But I think there is a point to be made that Rebecca's damage is relational. Her father walked out on her, right? And then the popular narrative on social media is that you fix yourself. If you can't love yourself, how can you love somebody else? I'm just not sure how much of that you can do alone if the damage was inflicted by a person to start with. So it's not going into a relationship expecting it to heal, but somebody to scaffold and hold with you, I think is an important part of the healing process.
And do you think that's the function of therapy? Do you think therapy can provide that relational healing?
I mean, a psychologist in training, so I should say yes, but some part of me also feels like it's an indictment on society that all we say to people now is go to therapy. You know, if you're struggling, everyone should be in therapy. What happened to healthy social relationships? Have we forgotten how to co regulate? Have we forgotten how to hold for each other? Why has the world become one where therapy is the norm? You know, that's the question that floats in my mind. Hey, it's great for business, so please, I haven't qualified yet, so please keep coming. But it raises an interesting point about how social dynamics have changed in society. So much so that if somebody's struggling, our first response is, "Hey, are you in therapy? Go and deal with that with your therapist."
I think that's a great point, and I think maybe the role of therapy should be to provide someone with the safety in themselves and the skills, the relational skills to, you know, manage relationships that are going to be tricky with people who are not like therapeutically trained, um, but so that you can just kind of give you the skills to be able to go out in the world and have relationships that can then provide that relational healing, almost to provide. So therapy's role is to provide that um, emotional skin to kind of protect yourself in these relationships that are not going to be 100% perfect all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to the extent that it becomes the buffer. And even if you're really damaged from early on like this, your father walked out on you, and it seems like he walked out on them that day in the episode, right? I don't think he came back. So that kind of damage is very hard to negotiate inside an intimate relationship. So maybe therapy does offer something of a buffer, so that you learn some of the skills there, play out some of the damage there, and inside a relationship, it can be can sort of work to kind of amplify the work you're doing. You know, it's like a symbiosis. But still, I mean, I think that I also think that we don't really know how to negotiate relationships. We don't talk enough about what does it mean to be in a relationship? What are we looking for? I think we all have these unspoken assumptions, and then when it doesn't go as planned, we walk away without thinking that a relationship is two competing worldviews coming together, and we're negotiating a way of coexisting and meeting our needs.
Absolutely. And I just want to say to anyone listening, like couples therapy or group therapy is not just for families or romantic couples. Like you can come to therapy as two friends or as, a group of friends, um, for to improve those relationships. So that's like my little pitch on behalf of all of us counselors and psychologists. If you're enjoying this episode and would like to support the podcast, you can subscribe at patreon.com/intersectional psychology. That will really help us to keep doing this work. Lulu, what do you think about this situation?
Um, there was you guys discussed quite a lot of things. So are we going back to your original
Wherever you
question?
want to go, wherever you want to
Okay.
go.
Well, first of all, Josh did not redeem himself with me even a little bit this episode. Um,
I think I was just thirsty in that moment.
but like I said earlier on, I think Rebecca, because when I watch it, I sometimes try to put myself in Rebecca's shoes, even though Josh didn't impress me at all. I was like, oh, I see. Like I mentioned earlier on, Josh is like filling in that hole that her father left behind, especially in this context of a party. Like her father left during a birthday party, and now this man that she moved to a whole new city for is saving her party and also calming her down. I think I've only so far seen that happening between Rebecca and Paula and Rebecca and Josh. Like how they've managed to make her not feel terrible about herself. And again, that's just going to contribute to her liking Josh more. But also reason why I'm like he didn't redeem himself because Mads is technically still with what's her name?
Yes,
Serene
Valencia.
Valencia. Yes, and I'm just like, I don't know about this whole situation about how, and also, sorry, I'm popping off now on Josh because I'm like, he knows what he's doing. Anyone with a normal level of emotional intelligence can tell that Rebecca likes you, Josh. Rebecca likes you. So why are you engaging in this behavior? Why are you encouraging it? Why you know what you're doing. And then at the end, for him to be all like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go home whatever time I want to, y'all, don't worry about it. You know? So you like this attention that you're getting from Rebecca. You like
Okay, no, no, don't
this.
hit on him so hard. Like, it could be subconscious. What would Freud say? It seems like he feels helpless in his relationship because he has no control. That girl is like, be here, do this, do that. And I think he might just be asserting control and taking back control. And in some ways, subconsciously might be wanting the validation. Because that statement of normal emotional intelligence, where you like anyone with normal emotional intelligence can see what's going on. Girl, that's doing heavy lifting. Not everyone has that meta awareness and the ability to like observe their behavior and be like, what's going on? I'm curious.
But it's like
So let's
everyone
give him the
around
benefit of the doubt and be like, it's subconscious.
he's not getting the B of the Denny because everyone around her can like Paula could tell immediately, even Greg could tell. So are you telling me Josh is sitting there a bit oblivious about the fact that this girl is interested in me? Like come on.
But the
The
thing is
garbage
also like Josh seems like the apex person in this community, and it seems like everybody likes him. Like all the girls were into him at school. We learn out later, so you guys don't know this yet, but yeah, he is like the golden child of this community. So maybe he's just used to getting that kind of attention from everybody. And I think there is a part of him that needs that kind of validation. And I'm not excusing his behavior, but I do think like he's used to getting away with stuff because people like him. And so he has never been held to account yet. And that is why he continues this problematic behavior. But it was interesting when he says to Rebecca, "Oh, we should just hang out whenever we want to as friends." And she's like, "Yes, the world be damned," and just like that very dramatic phrase, as if they're like these fated star-crossed lovers in some like epic love story, like Romeo and Juliet or Jack and Rose in Titanic. It's really seeing, and he didn't get anything from that. He wasn't like, okay, that's a very weird phrase to be using right now. The world be damned. But yeah, she's clearly seeing them as this. It's all feeding into her like epic love story, and he is oblivious. But then Rebecca finally shows up for Paula, helping her with Tommy's principal when she has to go to that meeting at the school. And you know, uh, up until this point, it seems like this friendship has been just a one-way street. Paula doing everything to help Rebecca's love story. Paula just giving, 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 and Rebecca taking. And here, for the first time, Rebecca is kind of reciprocating and giving something back to Paula. So I liked to see that.
Also, I just liked the one scene where the neighbor who said Rebecca would make a good case study or essay. There's a scene where I don't know, Rebecca's chugging beer or whatever, and she's like,
Yes.
look at her. She went to Harvard and she's a mess.
Yes.
Girl, preach. So many of us are
Yes.
messes. Hmm? Looks great on the outside, but inside,
Oh yes,
I love
Heather.
Heather so much. She's so
Yeah,
observant. Yes.
I
Mm.
like the addition of this character. I feel like we is like the three of us especially can relate to her, especially when she said, "Oh, I'm studying abnormal psych and I want to observe you." And I'm like, we are all Heather.
Yeah. And she was just like, "You're an A. You're an
Yeah.
A immediately." Remember? She's like, "I'm gonna get an A for my essay."
Literally.
And she's so cool and chill. Yeah, I'm a huge like
Yeah.
Bella Laval stan. She voiced one of the characters in Shira and the Princesses of Power. It's like an animated series on Netflix. Um, yeah, and that character is very, very similar to this character Heather, but yeah, I love Bella Laval. Um,
One question, you're not going to delve into diagnosis, right? Because I feel like I've watched one episode and I can feel like where they're headed with this diagnosis. And it was
so
just,
where do you think they're headed? Let's talk about that
I
quickly.
I feel like they strongly headed for borderline personality disorder. That's the vibe that I get. I knew we're headed that way, and I thought it would be an interesting, like one of the interesting points is that in the literature, there's a lot of debate around the sexism that attaches to borderline personality because the history is interesting. I think it came from psychoanalysis, and the borderline thing was that you're in between. Where do you exist? What is this? Is this a pathology? Is this just a strange way of being? Is it amenable to psychoanalysis? Isn't it? And it's still this indeterminate kind of thing where some of the literature has shown that women tend to get diagnosed with it more often than men. And even if men show a borderline profile, they're more likely to be treated for something like substance use or get a diagnosis like antisocial personality disorder rather
Or
than being.
narcissistic personality disorder,
Yeah.
yeah.
But up until recently, I think it's been a very stigmatizing disorder because it makes you sound
Mm.
like you're a hot mess. And it it makes it sound like a character trait because it's a personality disorder, right? It feels like there's something structurally wrong with you. And a lot of the literature now points to there being a strong correlation with women having gone through sexual abuse or some sort of trauma. So the parallels drawn to something like complex post-traumatic stress disorder, where it's like chronic trauma exposure in your developmental years results in the same kind of symptoms. There's a fragmented sense of self, you struggle with relationships, there's emotional dysregulation, and maybe reframing it as sort of an attachment disorder makes a little bit more sense and starts to deal with the stigma because a lot of clinicians would feel like you're borderline, there's nothing I can do for you, I don't know
Yeah.
how to help you. And thinking of it as a personality disorder, I think, is really hard if there's evidence that it's um, it's brought on to some extent by trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there is some literature also pointing to a genetic predisposition, but it's always kind of unlocked by trauma or some kind of precipitating factor, environmental factor in a person's life, or relational factor in a person's life. Um, and I'm glad that you brought up the sexism related to this diagnosis and just the fact that I mean, all of the personality disorders, it makes it sound incurable because it's a part of your personality, and your personality is relatively fixed and stable across your life. So does that mean I'm going to sit with this diagnosis for the rest of my life? Is it something that cannot be healed, or that cannot be managed? Um, and we've spoken in a previous episode a little bit about how the term crazy is more often kind of applied to women, and the crazy ex-girlfriend is a particular trope. And I think it is for the same reason, for the same misogynistic reasons. Crazy is also very much related to the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, um, and the way that people think about it and stigmatize it. I was wondering, you spoke a little bit about the kind of symptoms of BPD. What were you seeing in Rebecca that kind of shifted you that way?
It was the nature of a relationship with Paula. th- there was instability in the relationships. You know, the way that she interacted with people didn't feel settled. And I think the song around how they portrayed her as a young version, the No Friends song, gave me the sense that there's this fractured sense of self. She's so caught up in Josh and wanting him to kind of give her a sense of wholeness and complete her almost, that it evoked the sense in me that there's no firm sense of self. And she does struggle with regulation. To Lulu's point, Paula can talk her down, Josh can calm her down, but it's almost like she outsources regulation. She kind of overreacts, and then somebody else needs to be there to kind of contain it because she has no ability to contain it herself. So it was that where I was like, probably headed for BPD. But I do like what I appreciate about the show, and I guess you have to watch it over the course, is that it's trying to subvert the crazy trope by saying that there's often a narrative and a story behind it. So what we see at the end as crazy behavior has a narrative arc that kind of explains what happened. And there are some diagnostic frameworks in psychology that think of diagnosis that way. Instead of thinking of it as something that's wrong with you, it's like, what happened to you? And how did you adapt to the circumstances that happened to you? And how did it manifest in these behaviors that at some point served some purpose? They were geared towards survival, and now they're maladaptive. But for some people, there's a lot of relief in thinking about it like that. And I think that's what's good about what the show is trying to do.
Mm, absolutely. I think it's definitely taking this approach of, what happened to Rebecca? How did she get to this point? And I agree with everything you pointed out. There's also like a lot of idealization and devaluation of other people that she has. So she like idealizes Josh, and as soon as someone is no longer useful to her, like we saw in the previous episode, when she was trying to get closer to Valencia and it looked like they were having this friendship, she just completely like sidelined Paula. Um, and the way that she treats Greg now, it's also like a kind of a devaluation. Um, but yeah, I think in the bonus episodes, I'm going to be um, looking at the characters individually and looking at different ways of understanding them. So I'm going to do like a relational pattern analysis matrix for each of the characters. I'm going to look at some of the psychodynamic um, approaches to personality. Um, and yeah, I think that will be a very interesting way because you're right. There are different ways of approaching these things that are more or less pathologizing and that are more or less stigmatizing. And that is useful not just to, help us as practitioners maintain empathy for um, people who can sometimes be difficult patients, but then also for the patients themselves to um, have empathy for themselves and to understand their own issues or their own diagnoses without feeling a sense of stigmatization.
And sometimes over identification.
Yeah, it's something that, like, I think we want in a lot of the patients that we see as well. Like a lot of the times when they are struggling, it's because the villagers in their village weren't there for them the way they were supposed to be.
Mm, absolutely. Um, it's really beautiful. Do you have any other thoughts?
Bring back boy bands. Bring back boy bands. um, I
Yeah.
I wasn't in the phase of like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. I do know them because they had iconic songs, and Aurora had actually sent me the YouTube video of "I Want It That Way." It
Mm,
reminded me of that scene in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't know if you guys watch it. Have you guys watched
Mm.
Brooklyn
I don't
Nine-Nine?
remember what scene you're talking about, but I do
There was
watch
a
it.
where the main character made all the suspects sing that song. Okay, I'll send you.
I
But
do not
anyways,
remember that.
I just thought to bring back boy bands. Like that era was so great. I wasn't in the One Direction era either. Um, so but I listened to a lot of Asian boy bands. So CM Blue, FT Island, and I miss that era of like boy bands playing guitars and drum sets in their garage. That was it just feels like a great stage in life. I don't know if it's just because I don't like adulthood, so it like made me miss my childhood of seeing boy bands.
Yeah, I sent that music video to Lulu because I think that the styling of the way that they shot the music video for a boy band made up of four Joshes was very much. It reminded me a lot of like the styling in "I Want It That Way" by the Backstreet Boys. You know,
Yeah.
the white suits or the white clothes, like in this airplane hangar. But then the dancing, like some of the movements and the like, it was very much more like pulling from NSYNC's "Bye Bye Bye" video. Um, so yeah, very 90s based, and then you have
Why do you think they
1983.
chose that? It makes sense. Like, I guess she grew up in an era where the boy bands were the beacons of hope, and their songs always had that kind of message. We're gonna heal it. We're gonna fix you. Here's infinite love. Here's all the gifts. I'm gonna shower you with everything you need. And for somebody who's like wanting to be seen and feels abandoned, I guess it makes sense as a storytelling device.
And Lulu, you listen to a lot more K-pop than I do. What are the K-pop boy bands like now? Are their songs similar in terms of content?
I don't listen to much of the newer K-pop bands. For me, I I feel like they trying to appeal to the Western audience a lot more compared to. So there's different generations in K-pop. Currently, I think we're in the fifth, sixth generation now. The generation that I listen to the most is around like the second generation, a bit of the third. Um, but that was before. Yeah, like now I just feel like they trying to create songs that become trendy or viral on TikTok because that's how they get views. That's how they, get the audience that they are. But it loses like the quality of the song, the value of the song. They also like include a lot more English into the songs, which I'm just like, why? Can we go back to how it used to be? Um, so I don't know if I can comment much on how boy bands currently are, but back in the day, there's definitely still a big influence on, like if I look at R&B boy bands, there was a large influence that they got from American style R&B as well. Like the singing in the rain. It's all about love. Um, a lot of the songs are about love, heartbreak, and yeah, I was just thinking if I was Rebecca, even when I'm 30, 35, and I watch my favorite boy band ever, I'd probably also be crazy and screaming and hugging my inner little child because we've always wanted to see them live. Yeah, but similar concepts where they do sing a lot about love and hope and
Mm,
yeah, heartbreak as well.
yeah. So they're in the rain, they're wet, and they want to make you wet. Um,
Ah! Oh my gosh.
Flood your basement.
Oh my goodness. That was hilarious.
Okay, let's move on to rating this episode of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Season 1, Episode 3. I hope Josh comes to my party! Exclamation point. But so now we're going to rate it on our 5-point Fanon test for mental health representation in media. Test consists of 5 scales, each with 1 question contributing 1 point, leading to a total score out of 5. So, how would you rate it on the following 5 scales? Firstly, the Cooper scale. Are mental health phenomena depicted and named with clarity? Who would like to go first? Lulu, this is not your first rodeo. Would you like to go first?
Sure, I wrote down 0.5, depicted but not yet named with clarity.
I gave a 0.6 for similar reasons. Felt like they were getting a lot more of Rebecca's story. We're seeing some of the background and the history and the what is kind of informing her behavior. And the same with Paula. We're seeing Greg. He is... Darryn, how did you rate it?
Yeah, 0.5.
So next is the Hill Collins scale. So are characters shown as whole people without stereotypes or pathologization? I gave this a 0.3 because the main characters like Rebecca and Paula are definitely shown as whole people without stereotypes. Josh has some pros and cons in this episode, but then the series, or this episode in particular, does pathologize, facial differences, and it does pathologize kind of Tommy's diagnoses. So, yeah, I gave it a 0.3. Lulu, how did you rate it?
So I gave it a 0.4, a bit higher than you because like I was looking at, again, I'll be making a lot of comparisons to how I felt in episode 1 because I just continuously felt this thing of I don't have enough, and now that I've gotten more, that's how I may feel that, oh, she is now being depicted more as a whole person rather than the stereotypes, because I feel like the stereotypes in episode 1 was a lot more than this episode, and now it's sort of, now that we've shown her context, it allows you, like Darryn mentioned earlier on, to empathize with the character a bit more.
Gosh, so I gave it a 0.2 because I feel like it leaned heavily into the stereotype without anything else.
Mm.
In fact, a lot of the
Yeah, I
characters feel
think
that way, but on the other hand, it's also the storytelling device, so which makes it hard to rate to some extent, right?
I feel like it would be quite difficult to cover all that in one episode. Um, and as complex as mental health is, and having to build the story, like showing all the contexts of like how she got here and what affects her, it's quite difficult. But yeah, I do agree that in this day and age, it's quite hard to keep someone's attention. And I feel like I grew up in the middle era where I wasn't as exposed to technology, but I also am more exposed to it compared to maybe you guys. And
thanks, Lulu. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lulu.
I
Again,
feel like
just pushing me into an early grave.
I had the best of both worlds because I don't relate to that thing of not having enough attention to watch something for more than 18 seconds. I find it ridiculous. But I can, like, I acknowledge that I see it in the younger kids nowadays, and it's quite sad. It makes it difficult for people.
Next, we have the Crenshaw scale. Does the story acknowledge and challenge intersecting systems of power and oppression shaping mental health?
This was a really hard one to rate. I don't know because I beyond the ableism thing that you mentioned, I didn't see much room for kind of systems of oppression and power in this episode that could be dealt with like effectively. So it was really hard for me to rate. It felt like a not applicable in this episode. Um, I don't know. What did you think, Lulu?
No, I agree with you. I think that's why earlier on I mentioned the whole thing of I found it quite difficult to rate this particular episode. Like in episode 1, it was very easy for me to do this, but this episode I had to like give it further thought. And I also gave it a very low score, especially because that the whole scene with Josh and the sunglasses like flew over my head. So I was like, I don't know if this episode in particular spoke to any of sorry, I'm reading it right next to me. Oh, spoke to any of the systems of power or oppression compared to like the other episodes.
If I had to push it, maybe I would say that maybe it's a general theme because if a black person were doing the same thing, well, being a bit like stalkerish and obsessive and whatever, how society would internalize that or make sense of that might be very different to some of this white chick. You know, she's just a white chick, she's harmless. And so there's something about racial privilege in that. Whereas if it was a black person, it's like, oh my God, violence, call the police. There are those kinds of things at play, but that's distant. And I think one needs to be kind in the storytelling because that's not the aim of the story here right now, right? It's like your focal point is on mental health and those kinds of issues, and it's hard to incorporate everything and be sensitive from every perspective.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is racial privilege in that, if a black person had been behaving like she was, they'd probably be in prison or have been shot already. Um, in the US, especially. Um,
Even
and
being
there's
able to
also,
hand
I
out a
think,
flyer, right? Even just being able to hand out a
yes,
party flyer. Like, I guess if a white person's approaching with a flyer, you're like, cool, what's going on? But
or
so
even
I
like
guess
just knocking on her neighbor's door.
But that's such an
Yeah,
interesting thing because I when I saw that I was thinking, oh yeah, that's something we could do back in the day when we were younger, but nowadays we're not gonna go approach strangers and give them flyers. And now that you've mentioned like the racial thing, because currently I unfortunately have to do that. I hate it because I'm recruiting participants for my study, and it just made me think of when I'm approaching strangers like my opening line is already me not trying to address the stereotypes that have been assigned to people who look like me. Like when I approach them, I the other day I approached a stranger, and the first thing I said was I am not like coming with some funny Asian things. I'm not coming as a like I'm not from a religious group, because recently there's been like a lot of people approaching students like from a religious group. So I already, before other people assign those stereotypes onto me, because of my experiences growing up, I already assume that, oh, people think of me this way. So when I approach them, let me just address these quickly and then give them the flyer afterwards. Whereas like Rebecca, she could just go and be like, hey, come to my party. I don't know if I could do that. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, there's racial privilege, but also I think gender privilege. Like if a man had been doing this to a woman, there would also be like she would feel much more threatened if a man was, if the roles were reversed. So I gave this a zero point 0.1 because I felt like the only system of power and oppression that was kind of addressed was um, basically the principal trying to expel or transfer Tommy for having, okay, yes, he did something, I don't know, he broke the laws of the school by stealing a test. He did something wrong. But like also he was being transferred because he has all of these diagnoses. And then Rebecca and Paula use their knowledge of the law to kind of advocate for Tommy. So that was something, yeah, that I felt was, addressing that kind of system of power. And the principal was very much seen as this like authoritarian figure. Next is the child skill. If it depicts mental health professionals or therapeutic processes, including indigenous or informal ones, are these represented accurately, responsibly, and thoughtfully? I gave it a 0. I don't think there were any mental health professionals or processes in this episode.
I wrote
No.
I wrote 0.1.
Okay.
I think it was just
Expand.
the mentioning of the child's diagnosis, and also Josh singing
Oh,
about
yes.
CBT and things like that. But it's really low because they only mentioned again names or words that we
Mm,
typically hear in the mental health field, but not really addressing.
mm. And
Yeah,
don't do
no,
your
girl, I
research
gave
on
it a
TikTok,
zero.
please.
Zero.
Mm,
Thank you. So lastly, we have the Martin Barros scale. Does the story invite meaningful engagement with ethical issues without reinforcing stigma? Darryn?
Yeah, so I kind of said yes, pass. Like it showed the childhood flashback of the abandoned birthday party. Um, and I think it shows kind of ethical engagement with parental neglect. So it's giving this nature nurture versus argument and trying to kind of contextualize the behavior. So it brings some ethics into it in the process of trying to subvert the crazy trope, right? Because whilst context doesn't excuse behavior, it's an important part of understanding why someone is the way that they are.
Rating B.
Point five.
I said 0.6. Um, because yeah, similar to what Darren said, it does invite meaningful engagement, and the key word for me was invite. Is like it makes you curious, it makes you understand more.
Yeah, thank you. I gave it a 0.5 for similar reasons to you. I feel like it's a very self-contained episode in terms of we're creating the party, we're inviting to the party, we're going to the party, the end. If you want more from my conversation with Lulu and Darryn, check out the extended version of this episode on patreon.com/intersectional psychology. On the extended episode, we talk about why they used the boy band of 4 Joshes as a metaphor for Rebecca's idealization of Josh. We also discuss the emotional impact that receiving a diagnosis, or several diagnoses in Tommy's case, can have on a patient, as well as the necessary balance between self-regulating and co-regulating skills, plus a few other juicy outtakes. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to touch on that we haven't mentioned yet before we leave? Before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just thank you
So
for having.
thank you very much both for being here. I really appreciate your time. Lulu, you can hop off if you need to. Darryn, where can listeners go to find out more about you and your work?
Girl, I have no social media presence, so maybe invite me on again in a month and I'll try and like put some stuff up so people can see something about me. But until then, I'm a mystery. I promise I
I
have
said
friends.
the same thing. I said the same thing in the first episode. And I'm
Yeah, I
gonna
didn't
say the
even
same
bother asking
thing again.
Lulu this time because that's the
You're
answer
not
she
gonna
gave last
find
time.
me. You're not gonna find me on social media.
We gotta fix that, girl. Do you even exist if you're not on social media?
Quite happy where I am. I'm quite happy where I am, you know? We're not trying to be on people's 18-second attention span videos.
Well, thank you very much for being here, and thank you, listeners, for being here. But right now, we are going to go have a dance party by the windows. Until next time, remember that
Yay.
everyone has the right to live with their optimal mental health.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Intersectional Psychology. Intersectional Psychology, we're all so broken inside, is not endorsed by Warner Bros. Television, CBS Television Studios, Lean Machine, Webterfuge, Black Lamb, Rachel Does Stuff, or any of their subsidiaries. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and all names, pictures, audio and video clips are registered trademarks and or copyright of their respective trademark and or copyright holders. Please follow or subscribe to the podcast to get every episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review Intersectional Psychology in your preferred app. It really helps other people find the podcast. This episode of Intersectional Psychology was researched, written, recorded, and edited by me, Aurora Brown. For a transcript of this episode, please see the link in the show notes on your podcast app or go to intersectionalpsychology.com. A video of this episode is available on YouTube with closed captions. To support this podcast and get access to bonus content, including additional episodes and interviews, as well as more guided mindfulness sessions, please go to patreon.com/intersectional psychology. You can also chat with me on Blue Sky at intersectpsych.bsky.social and Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at Intersectional Psychology. But mostly Blue Sky. Aurora Brown and Intersectional Psychology are committed to the site Black Women Praxis. All episodes of Intersectional Psychology are for educational purposes only and are not intended to be a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I, Aurora Brown, am not able to answer specific health questions about individual situations. Always seek the advice of your health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this podcast. If you think you need immediate assistance, please call your local emergency number or any mental health crisis hotline. Everyone deserves good mental health.